Hello and welcome to COM 340. This is Rhetoric and Popular Culture. I am your instructor, Corey Paul Harrison. I am the Associate Director of Forensics at here at Alabama and Reese Pfeiffer. I'm also the Director of Campus Forensics, which is a program that you'll hear more about as we go on. I always like to tell people I've been on campus here essentially since 2006 as a student at various levels, and now being on faculty is very cool. And I'm very excited that I get to talk with you all about rhetoric and popular culture. To understand rhetoric and popular culture, though, we've got to understand what we mean by them in this instance. So there's a lot of courses you can take in communication studies that will give you the history and background of rhetoric. There's also methodology courses which will give you specific methods and thinkers to then apply. However, for our needs, rhetoric is really in action. It's about participating. Rhetoric is about analyzing things and understanding meaning. Popular culture is definitionally more complex than probably most people realize. There's lots of different ways to define popular culture and define popularity in general. And we'll be going over those ways. There's six main ways, but we'll talk about our main ones when we get there. And so, when looking at these two ideas together, when looking at rhetoric and popular culture together, we've basically got these two complex things that we're dealing with and are being asked to see how they go together. The good news is that they go together quite well, even though popular culture is not taken very seriously, even though popular culture is seen as being throwaway, right? Or disposable. Popular culture is extremely important. It's what we engage with the most as citizens in a society, and it's also surrounding us constantly. It's hard to avoid popular culture, regardless of the medium, right? Whether it's music or movies or commercials, advertising of any kind, whatever it is, we're constantly surrounded by it. So, taking the chance to study and analyze it is very important because it means that we will have insight into a big chunk of our walking day lives. These are some questions that we'll be asking ourselves throughout the semester. The first is, what is rhetoric in this sense? Basically, what counts as rhetoric? What counts as the construction of meaning in the context of specific media? So whether we're talking about a TikTok or we're talking about an Instagram post, whether we're talking about a comedy skit or we're talking about a music video, regardless, we need to be content specific. Context is king. And so when doing that, we've got to understand what rhetoric is in a specific sense, in a specific context. How is meaning created in this context? Because I don't have to tell you, you know that watching a TikTok and understanding a TikTok and the different ways that we engage with it is way different from the way that we engage with like an academic journal article. And so if we try to analyze one using the language of the other, we're going to get very strange, very weird results. So context is important in this case. We got to find rhetoric in this sense being defined by the artifact that we're analyzing. What is popular culture? What counts as popular culture is a very important question to ask. And the truth is, it depends on what you're analyzing and how you're analyzing it. What counts as popular culture? Um, when trending culture, things can blow up and become extremely popular one day, and then the next day we're sort of done with it as a culture. But certain things also exist over long periods of time, whether it's a TV show that's been on for decades, like The Simpsons, or something that sort of just started sweeping American culture by storm, like Love Island. What counts as popular culture, what we're talking about, is important. So we're going to want to define those bounds and also define popular culture itself. And lastly, is what do those two ideas have to do with one another? How does rhetoric help us understand popular culture? And then how does analyzing popular culture give us insight to meaning, but also the society that we live in? And it shouldn't be a question of, does popular culture tell us about us? The answer to that question is yes, of course it does. We just tend not to take it very seriously. So, rhetoric and popular culture together help us take popular culture more seriously, and it gives us a platform for analysis. Now, this is not a methods course, so when investigating these things, we will be looking at some methods, but none super in depth. And the reason for that is we can pick and choose the best parts of certain methodologies. We don't have to do a deep dive. So we're not going to be doing a deep dive into Kenneth Burke, for instance. We might be using some of his ideas like the Pentat, but we're not going to be going super in depth. Same thing with the Voss sisters, right? Incredible rhetoricians, great methodologies. We probably won't be going very in depth, but we will be taking bits and pieces. So we will be looking at methods. We will also be looking at how topics, overarching topics, are treated in different media. For instance, looking at intelligence and how intelligence is represented in songs, in movies, what have you. So we'll use topics as a way to guide our discussions. And lastly is the media itself, letting the media tell us how we should analyze it, how we should understand it, and then using that to analyze how meaning is created in those media, how we understand that meaning, and then what that tells us about ourselves, what we believe, what we think is important, and so on. Let's get ready now to talk about grades and GPAs, what we do to learn those things or to make sure that we're learning those things. The first is participation and engagement. That's going to be 150 out of 500 points, not 50 points, 500 points. And by participation and engagement, this is basically taking the place of attendance. It's, are you clicking through and listening to the lectures like these? Are you taking the reading checks and the reading quizzes? Are you basically engaging with the course? If we have a message board discussion, are you participating? So if you're engaging with the course regularly, like you should reasonably, then those points will essentially be automatic. But if it's the case where you're not really doing the course, you'll be losing those points. We'll be having 4 quizzes. They're worth 50 points each for a total of 200 points towards that 500 total. It's a big chunk of the grade, but it's important. These will be mainly multiple choice with some short answer. And I'm not trying to ever trick you, right? It's basically just to make sure that we're on the same page and we're understanding the same things. We'll be doing reading checks, like I mentioned. These are basically designed to serve as a check that you've engaged with the material, right? I want to make sure that you are actually thinking about the things that we need to be thinking about. And if there's a reading I post on Blackboard that you're doing the reading and engaging the reading, again, these are never meant to be any sort of a punishment. They'll be very brief, maybe 3 multiple choice questions or a short answer question, and you should be good to go. Sometimes on the quizzes, I might ask a longer question, but I'll let you know if we have something like an essay question on a quiz. We will not have any essay type questions on reading checks ever. That's just not how I like to do things. And like I said, that comes from 500 possible points, and that will equal your final grade. The distribution of points to grade percentage is on the syllabus, the link to which is posted on Blackboard. All right, so here's how I like to define rhetoric. There's a lot of different ways that we can define rhetoric and a lot of good definitions. However, the one that I like, especially for us, is persuasion in action. And by that, I mean we're looking for how meaning is made and how persuasive elements work as they're working. So we're engaging with them now. They're things that we are currently thinking about, currently engaging with, and we're trying to figure out, as we're engaging with them, what they mean and sort of what they're attached to socially in our society. So persuasion is sort of the core of rhetoric. But persuasion can be and is many different things. When I say persuasion, I mean appeals intended to change or impact, right? Or just affect. They don't have to reach the level of change, but are trying to have an effect on our attitudes, right? Our behaviors, what we do, and our beliefs. A belief is a bit more general than an attitude towards something. So we can believe that something is bad, but still have a sort of laissez faire attitude towards it. For instance, most people know, because of all of the campaigns that have been going on for decades now, that smoking is bad for you, right? We believe that. However, our attitudes towards smoking can be lax, right? And then the behavior for smoking would be actually smoking. And so if you're going to have a successful, right, at least on paper, a successful attempt to persuade people, then you'll want to make sure you're addressing each of these three things. But our attitude, behaviors, and beliefs are also impacted in really, really subtle ways. It's not always to change a habit. It can be simply to think that X idea is good, or that this is the new definition for something like the American dream, right? There's a lot of different ways that we're sort of pushed and pulled by media, and it's important to understand that. Persuasion in action, specifically in popular culture, there's a few things that we're going to want to realize, and that we'll be focusing on to different degrees as we continue through the course. The first is that most media exists to advertise, or at least advertising is prominent in most forms of media. By that, I mean, if you look at the history of television, it's essentially designed to sell people things. If people are watching television, then they are being sold things. We've got commercials, we've got product placement. Television has sort of always been an avenue for advertisement. But even in films and music, if you hear or see a specific brand being mentioned, chances are it is a paid advertisement of some sort, right? Like, it's not just a coincidence your favorite character drinks Coke Zero, right? That's paid for, that's planned. And it's not a coincidence that Chevy Silverado trucks are mentioned in so many country songs. Those are deals that have been made. And so there's advertising in a lot of our media, and the reason I focus on advertising specifically is because it's purely persuasive. Like, it's always designed to get a specific result, which is us purchasing whatever's being advertised. And so it's a nice entryway into analyzing other ideas as well. We also need to talk about the capitalist consumption model. Now, phrasing it like that can sound negative, but from a rhetorical standpoint, there's no negativity implied here. What I basically mean by the capitalist consumption model is that things are made in order to be consumed at different levels, right? That's it, and on big levels. And if you look at the next fact, the next bullet point, 80% of Americans are in service industry jobs. So our economy is dependent on a capitalist consumption model. Because of that, advertising is going to be extremely prevalent, and we're going to see the sort of modes of exchange, both through meaning and also money and capital, in a lot of our media. And the reason I bring that up is, like I said, it's just super prevalent. And because it's so prevalent, it's easy to catch and easy to analyze. And we can use that as reps, essentially, for analyzing other ideologies that are present. One thing to understand is that all media is created. It has a point of view, so people create it. Calling it, in quotation marks, the media doesn't help us too much. So it's created by people. It has creators. Also, meaning is usually broad. Mass communication, mass culture is always aimed at a broad audience. Literally, by definition, it's aimed at the most people as possible. And so meaning is typically broad. I say that because you, as a citizen engaging in this culture, are an expert in the things that you engage with. You have access to these broad meanings. And so you're not wrong when you think something means X in a commercial. There's an argument to be made for that. So trust yourself and trust your experience in this culture. An example of what we do is the video at the end of these slides, which I'll have you watch on your own. I'm not going to walk you through it. I will say that this is an analysis. This is a good analysis. It's taking things and comparing trends that appear, in this case specifically in country songs that topped the charts in 2013. It takes sort of a humorous look at that. But one thing that this is missing is the implication. It's the thing that answers the so what. It's like, okay, we've got this analysis, and it's a good analysis, it's a fun analysis, but what does it mean, right? What can we say about ourselves as consumers of this music? What can we say about ourselves as consumers of these ideas? And that's really what we're going for. So that's sort of what the class is designed around. Like I said, I'll let you engage with the video on your own time. This has been your instructor, Corey Paul Harrison, and I'll either hear you, see from you, or read from you in the future. I hope your first day is good and that you have a great first week. Bye.